So with that, I'd first like to introduce Mushraf Zaman and Renee McPherson. Mushraf's going to speak first, and then Renee will follow him. Mushraf is the director of the Southern Plains Transportation Center. He's a David Ross Boyd Professor and Aaron Alexander Professor of Civil Engineering. He's the Alumni Chair Professor of Petroleum Geological Engineering, and he's been our fearless leader for some time now, and we really appreciate his efforts. If he seems a little slow, he's still on Japan time, so he's actually sleeping, but he said he'll try to wake up for this. So Mushraf, with that, I'm going to turn over the, let me get this up. Okay, so for all of you speakers, I have a little remote control, forward, backward, and then there's a little pointer right here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry. I was trying to, as I was attending a conference, I was trying to learn how to talk while sleeping. So I will see if I really practiced well or not. In any case, I really appreciate this opportunity. This is our, as Dr. Miller indicated, that this is our first effort, Transportation and Climate Summit. And I would like to actually talk a little bit about the Southern Plains Transportation Center, in brief we call SPTC. And I would like to focus a little bit on the partnership for developing climate adaptive transportation and freight infrastructure. Actually, this is, if I have to summarize in one sentence, that's what the center is about. So we have a lot of activities in the transportation area. We have a lot of activities in the climate area. But really, in the intersection of these two topics, transportation and climate, I think we have some weaknesses. And the center, SPTC, has work plan, in order to address this. So SPTC, the Southern Plains Transportation Center, its vision is to develop a diverse and inclusive, regionally based, nationally recognized research, education, and outreach center. So I think this is a big difference between a traditional research center and SPTC. In case of SPTC, in addition to research, you have to focus on education, outreach, tech transfer, workforce development. So those are equally important, and that makes it pretty challenging. But I think we have to do all of these because this is not only important to Region 6, but also it is important to country. And also focus, and our center is specifically focused on underrepresented groups. So that include the increasing Hispanic population, Native American, addressing the transportation needs of specific to Native American population. And as you also know that a lot of people who work for the DOTs, they will be retiring in large numbers. So workforce development becomes really, really important, and underrepresented groups participation is vital. So our mission is to develop a comprehensive, cost-effective, and immediately implementable solutions to critical infrastructure problems. So, this center, our center is funded for a period of 2 years. So we have 2 years of funding. We are likely to get a third year of funding. But really, during this time, I think we need to make sure that we have enough accomplishment so that we can, recompete, when the next recompete happens. So this is why I think developing implementable solution is extremely important, to the center, and also, preparing the transportation professionals, particularly the underrepresented group, to the leadership role is also very important to our center. So I think in terms of our strength, I believe that we have a very strong group. As you can look into this list, we are a consortium of 8 universities, and this is a very good mix of universities and very strong group, no matter how you define it. So the University of Oklahoma is the lead institution. Then there are two other universities from Oklahoma, Oklahoma State University and Langston University. And Langston University does not have engineering program, and it's a HBCU. But they bring immensely important, actually they become really important to the consortium because they bring a dimension that we do not have in other consortium members. The University of Arkansas, Louisiana Tech is also a relatively small university, but they have engineering program. The University of New Mexico is a Hispanic serving institution, and also the University of Texas at El Paso and is another HSI where their the percentage of Hispanic student is larger than the other students. And the Texas Tech University, we also have two international universities as part of our center is Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay, India, and Shandong University in China. So if you look into this list, actually we have a very strong group. Now, the center is motivated primarily, from the MAP 21 legislation. The MAP 21 legislation actually talks about the improving infrastructure integrity. And how do you do that? Making them more sustainable, making them more resilient. Kelvin Drogemeyer talked about the resiliency is important, and environmental impact it's given. So we have to be able to really look into this resiliency in terms of weather extremes, climate change, and also the growing societal concern because what we do as a society and transportation, they're intimately related. So this is why, as you said in the beginning, that the climate adaptive transportation and freight infrastructure is really our, the topic that we want to do at research level, education, and workforce development. So how do we do that? Well, actually, the transportation engineers have to work with the climate scientists. This is why I think our two centers really working together become immensely important. And I think this is, in my knowledge, is the first time, at least in this university, that we are actually, I think this is a tremendous opportunity because if you look at our resources collectively, we have tremendous resources. And one of those is this facility that we are in. It's a very unique. This is the only building on campus where you need an ID to enter the building because it's a federal facility within the university, National Weather Center. We have Oklahoma Mesonet. That's another tremendous resource in terms of data. We are collecting continuously that we should be able to use. Then we also have West Texas Mesonet. Our Associate Director Sanjay from Texas Tech is here. So the the West Texas Mesonet is another great resource. Oklahoma Climatological Survey, and then our two centers. So if we look at this collectively, I think we have resource-wise, it's a tremendous, both human resource, facilities, so we ought to be able to use these. Now, I'm not going to go through these details, but in terms of where do we begin? So our first step was to actually, select competitively and a transparent process some projects that are in the intersection of climate and transportation. So one of the culture that we are trying to really pursue, and we are very serious about that, is to be able to bring in our resources together. That's why you can see many of these projects are actually multi-university, multi-institutional project. And we are very purposeful about doing this because that's what we need in order to be successful. So we have, in this particular competition, we just completed, so we have, we funded 23 out of 49 projects, and many of these are multi-institutional, multi-university. The key here, I think, as we talked about, is finding or coming up with immediately implementable solutions. I tried to highlight in color here some of these projects actually may be able to produce. It's not easy to actually come up with immediately implementable solutions, but I think our researchers have proposed some topics that are possible that they will lead to some tangible results that we can actually all be proud of. Now, those of you who are familiar with this program has one-to-one match. We receive $2.6 million per year from the federal government, but then we also have to come up with dollar-for-dollar match. So some projects have been funded through the matching, and you can see that they are also, I think we have good number of projects that are directly related to this intersection of climate and transportation. So I am really excited, I think, about this. We see this as a privilege and opportunity to be able to work with the this truly interdisciplinary group. And personally, I'm very excited about the opportunity to make a difference in the society, in the transportation, because we all came to this facility some way. You did not fly. So I think we all need to understand is how we can actually make a better society, provide better transportation. So I'm very excited, and I'm thankful to all of you really for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come here. And I look forward to listening to these exciting presentations that will follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mushraf. Our next speaker is Dr. Renee McPherson. She's an associate professor of geography at the University of Oklahoma. She's a director of the South Central Climate Science Center and an adjunct associate professor of meteorology. She holds degrees in mathematics and 3 degrees in meteorology. And she is highly accomplished in her field, and we're very grateful to have her as a partner. So with that, Renee.
Thank you, and I would like to echo my colleagues on welcoming you here to the University of Oklahoma for this very important discussion between the weather and climate and the transportation researchers and practitioners on both sides. Let me tell you a little bit about our Climate Science Center. So back in 2009, then Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar developed the idea for 2 new entities within the Department of Interior. One was called the Climate Science Centers, a network of 8 centers that would really provide some of the scientific information that would be needed out in the community of not only Interior employees, but their stakeholder groups and their partners. And then the second was called the Landscape Conservation Cooperatives, and these are groups of agencies, organizations, both profit and nonprofit, federal, state, and local, that really have to make decisions on the ground about natural and cultural resources issues. The landscape conservation cooperatives themselves, there's 22 of those, and you can think of them geographically as kind of mega ecoregions. So within those ecoregions, there are concerns with regard to maybe forested land or open prairies, water resources, tribal lands, and the landscape conservation cooperatives are out there to help all of these communities talk to one another and engage in some of these challenges of our current decade and decades to come. The climate science centers serve the landscape conservation cooperatives and also serve a larger group of stakeholders in making decisions about our future climate, primarily about our longer-term trends in climate across the United States. And here in the South Central region, while geographically we may look like one of the smallest of the climate science centers, we actually have one of the most significant challenges, and that's because of the breadth of temperature and precipitation ranges that we experience going from the Gulf Coast all the way into the Southern Rockies. At each of the climate science centers, it's hosted by a university, and it has a federal partner that within the Department of the Interior. And both groups together try to provide information to decision makers with either the science, translating the science, providing decision support tools, or just information, including education, on the impacts of climate variability and change in their areas of responsibility, which might be focused on water resources, it might be on land management, it might be on cultural heritage preservation, anything that falls within the Department of the Interior's purview. Within the Department of Interior, the climate science centers are funded and founded by the U.S. Geological Survey and are in partnership with the host university and in some cases consortiums associated with that university. For the South Central Climate Science Center, my colleague, Dr. Kim Whitten, is our federal director of the Climate Science Center and housed within the same suite as our consortium members. And so we have another federal presence. We have a very large NOAA presence on this campus, and now a growing presence within the Department of Interior on this campus. Within each of the 8 climate science centers, some of them are hosted by a single university, but many of them are hosted by consortiums of institutions, including our own South Central Climate Science Center here. Our institutions include many of the institutions that you have as partners within the Southern Plains Transportation Center. So there's a lot of integration and collaboration that can happen on multiple campuses with the Climate Science Center and the Transportation Center. So our partners in Texas, our Texas Tech University. We have Louisiana State University, who's also our partner on a NOAA Regional Integrated Sciences and Assessments Center. And then within Oklahoma, Oklahoma State University, which focuses on our ag and land use. We have, we're very unique within the Climate Science Center infrastructure, and that we have 2 tribal nations as full partners within our consortium, the Chickasaw Nation and the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And we went to South Central New Jersey for one of our South Central partners, and that's NOAA's Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab. They are one of the worldwide leaders in climate modeling. Our current areas of emphasis are working with measurement modeling and decision support for our stakeholders. And in particular, one of the things that we're trying to do is to evaluate downscale model projections that would be used by our community of stakeholders. We also are trying to expand some of the capacity to do climate-related research in this area. Within the South Central region, it's been typically small groups or single investigators who have been working on climate research, and we're trying to kind of bind many of those groups together. We also work with early career professionals to develop a community of professionals that can work in an interdisciplinary manner. And then we coordinate with our partners in other leading centers, such as the Transportation Center here. I want to just briefly touch on some of the current areas of our research that might intersect with our transportation center. This is an example of some of the funded projects through our U.S. Geological Survey funding. And many of these have to do with ecosystems, and which will affect our coastal transportation, our management of forested areas and the open plains, as well as water issues related to water that may be going under bridges and other overpasses. And so this is an area that I think intersects very nicely with the Transportation Center. We also provide a lot of education about climate variability and climate change to a wide range of partners, including all of the 68 tribes within our South Central region. One of the things that we're doing with our partner at Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab in Princeton, New Jersey, is that we're trying to evaluate these what are called downscaled climate projections. Many of these climate projections are available as data sets out on the web, or you might have a friend in your university that has developed some climate projections, but it's really hard for users to know what are the best climate projections to use for their given question. So one of the things that we're trying to build is a way that we can evaluate these projections against one another, figure out ways that they can be improved, and geographically where they work well and where they work poorly, and then provide all of those data sets through a common portal and provide guidance to those of you who may then be using those to make decisions or to incorporate them into other models like hydrological models. One of the strengths of our consortium is that we do have university partners within our consortium who can go out and get other sources of funding that our federal partners cannot. And one of those sources is through the National Science Foundation. So one of the things that we have done within the past year and a half is we brought a $20 million National Science Foundation funded project to the region that really focuses on this integration of the social sciences and the natural and physical sciences, and how do decision makers build communities and build organizations that are resilient to climate variability and climate change. So that's a 5-year program that we're starting up that really has a lot of relevance to the transportation community. One of the reasons why this building actually exists and this community of scientists exists is because in this region of the country, much of our weather is dominated by what we call convective precipitation, or more commonly known as thunderstorms. And this is a very difficult problem to solve in terms of how do we forecast and project changes in thunderstorm activity in both the short term and in the longer term. And our partners here at the Center for Analysis and Prediction of Storms, which was founded by our current Vice President for Research, Kelvin Drogemeyer, and his colleague, Doug Lilly, back well over 15 years ago. They've become international experts on forecasting these convective events. And so now we're kind of sliding their time scale a little bit longer, so they've focused in the past 15 years or so on shorter time scales, on days to weeks, and now we're trying to work together to see how these convective events that are so important for intense precipitation in our region of the country and erosion under bridges, for example, how these events might change either seasonally or annually as we change in our climate. We also were very fortunate to receive funding through our new transportation center that will fund the 2 years of research of our new postdoc, Dr. Esther Mullins, if she'll wave her hand a little bit higher so people can see her. There we go. So, and Esther is looking for partners in the transportation industry, people in operations and planning, who can work with her on making sure that our research is relevant to all of you. And her focus will be on winter weather events, especially winter weather extremes, including ice storms and heavy precipitation events. She will also be looking at not only how those have occurred and the trends that we've seen historically, but then how that projects out into the future. And as I mentioned, this project is really meant to be one of the first steps to ensure that we have collaboration between not only weather and climate professionals, but transportation professionals, and bind those two communities together. Thank you.